Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Get Wealthy with me. As you can see, my dog is under DJ Newmark's chair. So we are not in the studio yet. We're hoping that our AC gets fixed today, and we're back in the studio in our next episode. But for today, I have a super special guest. DJ Newmark. He is the legendary DJ with two Grammys from Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, correct?
Yes, not both of those Grammys came from there, but we can just say that
He's going to have to tell us that story about where both of those Grammys came from because I did look him up a bunch, but I wanted a lot of things to be organic with our conversation. So I didn't go in detail on, because I did that on purpose. Okay. So after we had one conversation, a very long conversation. How was our conversation that we had when we first met?
it was awesome. It
Did we
lasted like
cover-
2 hours or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Over coffee.
Over coffee. Your treat. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
You did just-
I actually had to pick a coffee from him from Starbucks because he was confused with the menu.
I was. I'm not a Starbucks person. I apologize to all the Starbuckies out there.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing because he's going to save $7 a day, maybe $8 from not having Starbucks. So being on a Get Wealthy with Me podcast that's a good way to start off not being a Starbucks person.
All right. Looks like I'm in the right direction.
So
The dog keeps hitting my heels. I love it, but he keeps reminding me, hey, I'm down here.
Jack wants to be in all of the videos, but we're just going to make sure that he just sits quietly. Thank God he's not going to bark. So welcome. I appreciate you being our guest. We met through our chamber here in Wellington, Florida, and our conversation was so interesting that we covered. I knew you would have been an interesting person. I just didn't think that our synergy would be that good. Did you feel the same synergy when we had our conversation?
Well, first, let me say thank you for having me on your platform. I'm a fan of what you've been doing, and I've been watching a couple of episodes. A lot of the message that you say, it resonated with me. Again, I didn't know you outside of what I watched. So when we had our initial conversation, I was pleased to find out that your attitude and your energy and just everything about you was just so easy to conversate. And, so no, I didn't necessarily know what to expect.
Yeah.
Again, because I'm a fan. And so, sometimes they say just be careful meeting people that you admire, especially in the entertainment business,
Right.
or production business, because they may disappoint you. The person that they are may not be the person that they're projecting on their platform.
Absolutely.
And so, I was very open-minded to find that out, and very pleased to find that you are just an awesome, awesome woman.
Thank you for that. I'm trying to accept compliments with grace because I'm not used to accepting compliments with grace. So I'm just going to say thank you. It was also a pleasure meeting you, and the conversations that we had. We went a wide array of things. We're around the same age.
Right.
So going from our experiences from different times in our life, I enjoyed talking about. I also enjoyed talking to you about your perspective, and it's totally more interested in your perspective being in the entertainment industry, and what your perspective is about the industry, what are things that you liked, what are things that you didn't like, and in terms of money and finances, that's one of the things. So we're going to cover a lot of things today. One is going to be entertainment, being in the entertainment industry. The other is just going to be Gen X's, because we're Gen Xers. So we're definitely going to cover some Gen Xers that we might have more in common than others. And the others is probably coming from an immigrant family and minority background and kind of understanding that journey. So we're going to start with the entertainment industry. I'm going to start with that question. So what is it like, first of all, before we even get into finance and money, what is it like? What does it feel? What is that euphoria that you feel when you're entertaining?
Well, I tell you, especially with the style of entertainment that I do, which is oldies but goodies, aka throwbacks,
Right.
right? Old school, if you will.
Gen Xers, old school.
And I represent an era, I would say between the late 80s up to like 2000s.
Right.
Many people consider that era as in the golden era of
Absolutely.
hip hop and R&B specifically.
Yep.
So what I get out of it is to know that I can instantly time warp people back to a time
Which
and
we
to a
love.
place that brings them tremendous amount of joy and nostalgia.
Right.
And the energy that they give me as I take them onto that journey is so uplifting for me. In a
Right.
lot of selfish ways, it also helps me relive those times.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
It's one thing playing music on my own in the in
Right.
privacy of whatever, my house, my car, but to know that I can play a song and now we together are reminiscing.
Right.
It just is something about the synergy about that kind of environment. And even on the radio, where I obviously can't see my audience, I know because people are calling the
Right.
station or they're going on our Instagram and they're giving me DMs and, oh my God, I haven't heard that song since whatever. And
Yep.
so again, I get that fulfillment. That's what I get out of being an entertainer, knowing that I can instantly bring back people to positive nostalgia.
So, what is the different feel? I like what you're saying. You get your energy from your audience,
Mhm.
which going through this podcast, YouTube, speaking engagements, courses that I've been doing with financial education, I am realizing that that's the part I like. Not that I don't like my podcast audience. I love my podcast audience and I like having guests. So doing my podcast alone was a little boring, I have to say. So if teaching the education, but so doing the podcast with storytelling is actually more fun. But the best time I have is when I am doing a speaking engagement because I do get my energy from the audience. So I like that. But what I want to know more is how is it different today as a Gen Xer or when you were in your 20s and 30s? What is the feeling? How is that different?
Well, I just think that 30 years ago, we didn't quite understand the magnitude of what we were doing.
Right.
The fact that, for example, with Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch in 1991 is when Good Vibrations was on the airwaves in the number one spot
Right.
on Billboard. And so no one would have thought back then that in 2025 that we would actually sell out arenas to where there's 20, 30,000 people that are just singing word
Right.
for word. So I think that's the difference. It's more of an appreciation, kind of like in life.
Right.
Right. As you get older, you kind of look back at your 18-year-old self or your 20-year-old self, and you think, wow, I thought I knew all the answers then.
Right.
Right. And then you jump back into where you are now and you can appreciate the journey, the life journey.
Yep.
And so that's my thing, the appreciation of being able to still be in the music industry,
To continue that journey.
to continue the journey. Correct.
Mhm.
Because we're still making music.
Right.
Matter of fact, we're releasing an album later on this year.
Oh, that's cool. We're gonna have to hear more about it. You want to talk
Absolutely.
about it now, or do you want to?
I mean, however, I'm just pretty much answering the
Well, I want to
question.
hear about it. I want to hear about it.
Okay. Well, we're dropping an album, and we are also bringing entities, other artists that share that nostalgia platform.
Right.
So, for example, Cisco
Ooh.
from Drew Hill is
Yes.
on our album.
Mhm.
CC Peniston
Oh my gosh,
is
I
on
love
our
her.
album. Digital Underground,
Awesome.
Color Me Bad,
Oh, that is now our era.
Color Me Bad, Soul for Real.
That's awesome.
And so, that's to name a few.
Yes.
And so these
So
are
it's a collaboration.
it's a collaboration, and what we're wanting to do is obviously gain new listeners, right?
Right.
But at the same time, we also want to bring those individuals who fell in love with us as an artist,
Right.
and help them appreciate where they're at now by
Right.
giving them something fresh from a familiar voice or familiar brand.
Right. Right.
And so that kind of goes with the growth. We don't
Right.
want to just talk about
What
30 years
happened back
ago.
there?
Right. Even though there's a lot of value in
Yeah.
that.
Right. You appreciate that, but you're still moving forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love
Absolutely.
it. I love it. That's excellent. So we're looking forward to that. Please let us know when that's on, so we can be first set of fans somewhere along the way.
Absolutely.
If not the first, sets of fans, right?
You know, you do need a platform theme song. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm thinking we do need a platform team song, Chala. What do you think? You really need to have a mic back there. Don't you think so, DJ Newmark? She has a lot to say when the mic's not on.
You know what? But she's glowing even though she doesn't have a light or
She,
a mic.
she's glowing to us, but I wish my audience would see how much she glows. But I'll work on that. We'll work on that part of it. So, anyways, getting back to one of the things, going back nostalgia now. So much have changed in terms of financial. Well, we always hear, right, when it comes to entertainers and it comes to um, you know athletes, because we and I'm going to put myself, I'm not an entertainer and an athlete, but I'm going to put myself in that group where we didn't grow up with a lot of money, and we come to have to deal with a lot of money, make a lot of money, but spend a lot of money too. How do you What would you tell your younger self about something today that you would learn, that you would want to say financial wise or money wise, or a money habit that you would tell your younger self today?
Well, I think for me, the biggest thing would be understanding credit. Um, in 90, as a college student, I was given a catalog of credit cards.
As a college student, they hang out by our college.
We
They
were
gave us free
actually,
T-shirts.
we were, in my opinion, I'm not very, I haven't researched, but from my estimate, our generation was the generation that really kind of messed up credit, because our parents didn't have that.
They
All
didn't
right.
have it. No, it was
So
kind of new to us.
it was right.
Yeah.
Just like computers, like
Yeah.
like we
We were the
grew,
computer. Yep.
correct. We grew with technology,
Yeah.
right? Cell phones, things of that nature. That was us.
It didn't matter if our computer was 30 pounds. We were the first one to have
Correct.
it.
So with that being said, with like credit, we didn't really quite understand it, especially if you came from a background, like you said, that didn't really have a lot of finances or financial freedom.
Right.
And so here I am with these cards, and I'm just swiping, charging. And to the point to where I wasn't very. I mean, I'm not gonna say I wasn't financially educated. Obviously, you only have this amount of money. Don't spend more than that. But
That's life 101. Yes, but
I don't think that I had the type of coaching, if you will,
yes,
that would talk about the possible ramifications of how it can affect you decades later.
decades later.
Right?
Agreed.
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
And we were also the generation that kind of knew how to find a gray area and a lot of rules. Like, for example, I know a lot of parents that were parents at the same time I was, that put their utilities in children's name, and used their socials and stuff because they had messed up,
Right.
their credit.
Right.
And again, there, and I actually did read an article years ago that talked about there were a lot of millennials that when they were trying to apply for credit on their own, that they were getting
that's
denied.
very interesting.
They were being denied because
And they didn't know why.
They didn't know why.
Yeah.
Right. And so luckily there was legislation that was passed that obviously said, look, back when this account was open, this person
was 10 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but
we can only give you so much. Yeah.
and on top of that, again, it was us, our generation that did that.
Right.
Our parents didn't do that to us.
Right.
So I guess credit fraud or credit protection, stuff like that was really established because of our generation. So
We made another thing.
I tell you, we were flying the plane while we was building it.
Yep.
And-
I like that. I like that saying. We were flying the plane while we were building it. God only knows we would have crashed it sometime. We probably did crash it a couple
probably.
times.
We definitely crashed that bad boy several times. And so, but again, I think, crashing it is how you learn.
That's how you learn.
And
That's how you learn.
so what I would tell my earlier self, which I actually try to tell my kids,
Right.
because they are basically my earlier self. It's just interesting how, again, that 18-year-old, 20-year-old think they know it all.
Yep.
I try to tell them the cautions and some of the warning signs,
but they don't realize that when we do say that, they just think we're trying to be know-it-alls, right?
Right.
So if we're going to talk about kids, I got two adults now, not kids, and they don't realize that I'm not just wanting to lecture them, or you're not wanting to lecture. You're speaking from making that mistake.
That's right.
And you're trying to teach them, if you're smart, you learn from your own mistakes. But if you're really smart, you learn from other people's mistakes. And you're the other person. I'm the other person.
Right.
Okay, we made this mistake. We're telling you, you don't do it. But unfortunately, that's not how human nature works, right?
Right.
They're going to have to go out and make those mistakes themselves. Once upon a blue moon, they learn from us. We give them one. But for the most part, but I'm not going to stop talking, and you shouldn't stop talking.
And I think that's why your platform is so effective, because we are giving them, your audience, an opportunity to hear from a different point of view, or even a different voice. But the information, hopefully, there's some consistency there,
Right,
that will resonate and make someone go, now they understand. Now
right,
it's more comprehensible because it's coming from a source outside of their home.
outside of their home.
Right.
And like, so my thing now, I truly, like, as I move on with my message about intentional money management, one of the things that one of my messages, you have to be intentional about what you do, and you cannot go to extremes. Like, it has to be a moderate. So I don't want to be like my parents that deprive themselves of everything to save a couple of dollars. Because why do you have money? The purpose of money is to help you build that freedom, help you build that happiness. It isn't the happiness, but it's supposed to help with it. And if you think otherwise, then you're fooling yourself. It is part of what gives you that freedom. But for some people, when they're tied to it one way or another, I think, in my opinion, when it comes to the almighty dollar, it isn't the almighty dollar, and it controls you in both spectrums. Like, for example, my in-laws, and they don't watch my podcast, I don't think so. They won't.
They don't watch, so say what's on your mind.
They have lived on barely nothing, right? But when they are ready to spend $1, it is so painstaking for them, because they are part of the deprivation mentality. They don't give themselves permission. And in my thinking, that's the dollar controlling them there on this end. Whereas on this end, where money is spent so freely, but in the back of that person's mind, they have no pot to piss in. So they still have that anxiety about not having a pot to piss in. Although they're spending it, they're not truly being able to enjoy it, because they're not. Tomorrow, they could be pitching a tent.
Right.
So I think in both of these aspects, that all the dollar is controlling you. If you live moderately, enjoy some of it. You don't have to wait for tomorrow for everything, but you need to divide it up. You need to prioritize. So that's what I'm trying to teach our generation, our kids, that, you have to meet yourself in the middle somewhere, and more so today than our time, right? When I speak to millennials, they think we messed stuff up for them. They don't think we messed it up as bad as the boomers, but they think we messed it up.
Right.
And I would agree with them to a certain extent, but in today's society, they have to be more educated. We're going to lose our middle class if you're not financially educated.
Right.
And what happens, do you think? So, you and I have talked a little bit about this, and I just would like your opinion, and I'll give you my opinion. What happens if we lose the middle class, our middle class? Then we're just like any other third world country, where the rich is super rich and the poor is super poor. What America makes America the best country to live in the world is we have a middle class, and I believe we're gonna keep that if we're financially educated.
Yeah, I find it very hard to conceive the notion or embrace the notion of us losing the middle class as long as we remain capitalistic.
Meaning,
Well,
can you elaborate a little
sure.
bit what you
Well, I
mean by
mean,
that?
well, when you have, let's say, basically two forms of government, you have a capitalistic government where there are no regulatory presets as far as saying you are going to be a doctor and you can only make this amount of money. We're in a social type of economy or government, like in China, for
Right.
example.
So that socially, that's communism.
Well,
Yes. Yes.
right. But I just want to talk about the economic
Right.
form of it, where every doctor is making that, every lawyer is making that, every military person is making that, and so forth. With all the different occupations,
Right.
they're capped.
Right.
Where here, what makes our country so dynamic is that there is no cap. You can potentially gain as much as you want.
Right.
And so to lose the middle class, in my mind, is really hard for me to even try to digest a what if, because we will always have haves and have nots, and then you'll have people that have some. So the sum to me is the middle class.
Right.
So that's why it's really hard. I don't know. You seem to be more open-minded to that notion of the middle class going away.
Well, I don't think that we will lose our middle class completely, but I do think that our middle class is shrinking, right? And being a child of immigrant, understanding the immigrant society and understanding the financial part, because remember, I've been an accountant for 3 decades. So I see finances from different socioeconomic areas, from different socioeconomic clients, and understanding, seeing what they make, seeing what, for example, how a boomer right now that are retired or close to retirement, how their finances are set up as opposed to a Gen Xer who are us, how ours is set up. And it's not a generational thing in terms of, it could be, there's certain parts that are the same because of our generation. And then there's certain parts that are completely different because of our money mindset and our motivation. For example, the boomer generation. I have clients that are boomers, right? Most of them have worked for large companies. When they started working, we didn't have an entrepreneurial society like we have now. The entrepreneurial societies that we have now actually went exponential during COVID and after COVID, where people started opening their own little small businesses and started working for themselves, and it was more accessible to them. For the boomers, it wasn't. You had large companies that you worked for, but these large companies also took care of their employees. So they did not have to have financial education and learning how to set up a 401k or to have a Roth account, or they didn't have to worry about health insurance, right?
Okay.
Those are like 3 basic things that you and I, but more so our kids, but really have to worry about. And in order for you not worrying to think, I would have to say to think about. And if you are not financially educated, those are complicated things in this society. And if you don't have financial education, you can mess that up. With the boomers, for example, I have a couple right now that is a boomer. He's retired. He used to work for a large company. His pension is $90,000 and his health insurance is paid for. That is part of his package as a boomer. He worked for a super large company that made large amount of money after him. Mind you, health insurance was really cheaper then, because from the time I started working in a full-time job, which was I think 97, 98, that's when I started working full-time, maybe 99, I don't remember exactly. A family coverage for health insurance with no deductible, no copay, no nothing was $300.
Wow.
I worked for the Red Cross for 5 years. When I finished working for when I left after 5 years, that same family coverage, but now there was co-pays, there was deductibles, there was all these other things. The coverage was less, but it was $1,100.
Wow.
So between 5 years, the cost of health insurance exponentially went up, and the coverage, your benefits exponentially went down. Which I could have seen from then the problem of what we are having today when it comes to health insurance. Boomers didn't have to worry about that. They still don't have to worry about that because their company guaranteed them. Like I said, I'm giving you an example of one couple where he gets his pension. He didn't even have to pay into that pension. That is a defined benefit plan. That's his benefit. It's not like our kids now, when they start working, they have to put into a 401k to get something out of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We had to do that too.
Yeah.
We had to put into retirement to get to get something. We still have to do that. They didn't. So they were able to survive without being that financially educated. It was simpler to buy a house. It was simpler to buy a car. There was no leasing of cars. It was simpler to do everything.
Yeah.
So financial education, you can't say, oh, well, what happened? How did they survive? It wasn't needed for them because a lot of things was done for them. They worked for these big conglomerates that made a lot of money off of them and gave them back some of it. That's not the case anymore. So why I'm saying, going back, long-winded. I am really long-winded, guys. Long-winded, going back to with my thing about the middle class is, if we're not intentional about our money, we're going to be poor. It's going to be a choice. It doesn't matter if you're making 500,000 or you're making 100,000. If you're not intentional, because I see people who make 500,000 and literally do not have a pot to piss in.
Right. Sure.
I see it. I have paperwork. I look at it. I do this all this time.
Right.
So, and I see people that make 100,000 and have a house, go on one vacation a year, go out to dinner once upon a blue moon, send kids to college, and do it all in $100,000.
Wow.
So when I say that it does not matter how much money you make, it only matters, about your mindset and how much you're going to be keeping. It does not, because I see it. So, but that's my point. So if our kids are not intentional, if my kid was like a boomer and didn't really think about putting into a Roth or something like that, or contributing to the 401k, because we have now defined contribution plans. If you contribute, you get. If you don't contribute, you don't get.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I know a lot of companies too are they are forcing employees to contribute. Like there's no you can't waive that. So a lot of companies are taking 3% and is going into some.
I hope that there's something that says that, because we are not a regulated society where we force people what to do with their money.
Some companies,
we are a free market system and we do believe in little regulation in order for us to people to do. We believe in a choice. We believe in everybody having their choice. So part of our society, part of having that choice is making the right one. Right. So what defined contribution plan is, and I'm a little more education financially because I went to school for 3 decades more than you, is if you contribute 3%, we're going to match 3%. But in order for us to give you that 3%, you have to give, you have to contribute. It's your money. It's going into your 401k, but that's what 401k is. If you contribute 3%, we'll give you some. But if you choose not to put in any, then we're not giving you any.
Okay, so with that being said, why do you get penalized if it's your money? I'm not talking about the matching part. Whatever you vested. Why is there a penalty if you take a loan out, if you take that money out?
If you take a loan, you are not penalized. There's a difference. If you take a loan from that money, you're not penalized. So I always advise people to look at that option first, because this is supposed to be retirement, right?
Right.
You get penalized if you take it out before the age of 59 and a half. In some cases, there are exceptions to the rules. Like if you lose your job, if you have help, you can take out some for education.
Or
There's
house,
exceptions,
something like that.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, your first time home buyer. Yeah. All of these are exceptions. But if you notice about our society, if we, like you said, forcing people, that's the government way of less regulation, but they're kind of forcing you to think before you take that money out. Right? Okay. To think before, because if we let everybody run amok, likelihood they will, and then when they're 60 years old, they've taken out all the money. It's supposed to be retirement savings.
Gotcha.
But there are exceptions. Where there's a rule, there's an exception.
Gotcha.
So that's where they're kind of forcing us to think about what we're doing, and I know it's our money, but they're also giving us that that chance to think about what we're doing. If someone is really strapped for something, I would recommend, free advice here, I would recommend you take a loan. And you know why I recommend that? I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah, why?
So let's just say my AC broke down in my house, right?
Yeah.
And I need, I don't know, $10,000 to fix that AC.
Yeah.
So if I take the money out of my 401k, I'm 50 years old, I am going to get penalized. I'm going to have to pay a 10% penalty, plus I'll have to pay the tax on that.
Right.
And that's why we defer the tax on those things, is the likelihood is when you retire, your tax bracket is less. So if I'm going to pay in a tax bracket when I'm working full time, my tax bracket is higher now. So my tax on this will be higher. It's whatever your bracket is when you're taking the money out. So when you're retired, you're not going to be making money and retirement money. So your tax bracket is lower.
Right.
You get to take it out then. So I'm getting two penalty here. I'm getting the 10%, and likelihood I'm paying more taxes on the money I'm taking out because I'm also working.
Right.
So my tax bracket is higher. So that's two penalties, I think. That's how I think of it.
Okay.
I would suggest that if your company offers, take a loan out, take $10,000 loan on your 401k. So that means you're not touching your 401k. You're taking a loan from yourself. In that loan, the loan will say, okay, you can take $10,000 out of this 401k. A loan as your collateral is the 401k.
Right.
And there's a 4% interest on it. Guess who the interest goes to? You. You're borrowing money from yourself. So you're going to pay back the $10,000 plus 4% interest to yourself.
Really?
Yes. So
I thought that 4% in your example went to the brokerage that's managing.
Nope.
I always thought
you are borrowing the money from yourself. You are loaning yourself money. Your today's self, your present self, is borrowing that money from your future self.
Oh.
And you got to protect your future self.
So how does the company that's managing the 401k, where do they get their cut for the service of?
So a lot of the times the managing company that's managing your 401k gets money. Well, they do get a fee from your 401k regardless.
It's just a fee though.
Yes, it's just a fee.
Gotcha.
It has nothing to do with that type of stuff, but also they get fees from the company that's doing your company, that they're getting additional fees for. Plus they're investing your money, so they might be getting they're managing funds and getting money that way. Yeah. So there are many ways that they're getting paid.
Wow, okay.
So you see, If somebody is watching this podcast with me and DJ Newmark right now, we just taught you a secret.
That's right. I'm going to call my people right now and get a loan. Okay.
He's not. His AC didn't break yet. He gotta wait until his AC break first.
In
Okay.
South Florida, that thing can go out any moment.
Oh my God. Yep. Like our studio right now. That's why we're here. We cannot stand being in that AC place. So those are all the little things that I want to teach.
Yeah.
There's strategies to do things. Why people build wealth. I'm not saying they get wealthy. I'm going to say they build wealth.
Mm-hmm.
How they build wealth is understanding strategies. That's what separates the wealthy from just getting by. Is understanding, being smart and intentional about what you do. If you want to spend something, know why you're spending it. Don't do it mindlessly. If when you're saving, be strategize how you're saving. Invest what you don't need immediately. Understand the power of compounded interest. And those are all little things that I want to teach our kids, and I want to teach us, because there's a lot of us that don't know this,
Yeah.
about being things. So when someone, like for example, with tax returns, right? The number one question people always ask me is, can I deduct that? Can I deduct this? Can I deduct that? I've been trying to deduct Jack and get him a social security number for 8 years. And,
if you make him a service dog, I heard you can do that.
No, he can't get a social security number. His father's a diabetic. I would try to get him, but I wish he could get, but unfortunately, the government does not allow us to do that.
Okay.
So, but people think a deduction is a deduction, but there are so many different levels of deduction. For example, there's tax credits, right? That's the ultimate main buku of all. That's the best kind of deduction you can get. Then there's above the line deductions, which is super good deductions also. Then there's itemized deductions, which are maybe deductions.
Right.
Then there's miscellaneous deductions, which are even double maybes.
Right.
So I already told you about 4 different aspects of a deduction. So when someone asks, can I deduct that? Your person might tell you yes, but you might end up not even qualifying for, yes, you can deduct it.
Sure.
You can deduct it.
There's that
The
one.
law says you can deduct it. But what does that really mean? So those are all little things. You don't need to understand, like when clients ask me, okay, when I'm educating them, because that's how I work. I'm not a tax preparer. I'm a tax strategist with my
big difference. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding that out lately because I'm looking at other CPAs to take over my tax business. And I'm understanding that there's a lot of tax preparers. There's not a lot of tax strategists out there, no matter how qualified or CPAs you are. So when people ask me, well, Sharon, that's why I hire certain people. That's what I hire. That's true. I hire a person to clean my house, right? It doesn't mean that I don't know where the dirt is or that I can't do it myself. It just makes more sense for me to hire somebody because that's what they're going to do. So hiring a tax person or hiring a tax strategist or understanding that you're hiring somebody to do something does not mean you shouldn't be involved in it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And money help. I mean, it's just like regular health. If you don't go to the doctor and you don't pay attention to what the doctor's saying, or you eat Popeye's chicken every single day,
stop, Sharon. Why are you doing it?
Then what happens? We get messed up. We're not paying attention. We're like, all right, we'll worry about that later.
Right.
We'll worry about that later.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's human nature to a large part, like procrastination and stuff. I mean,
But I'm not saying you have to be perfect.
Right.
And I'm not saying we shouldn't have Popeye's chicken. We just talked about the sandwich being the best, better than Chick-fil-A, I heard, but I'm not saying that. Popeye is getting their plug now,
I know, right?
Contact us if you need us to be on your commercial. Okay?
Right.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking, so we have to be moderate, so going on So other than what you would tell what would you tell your future self, being in the entertainment industry and being a Gen Xer?
Wow, that is a great question. What would I tell my future self?
You know, I did not think that I would stump you in not having an answer for something, because we didn't have any pregnant pauses before.
Yeah, you know, I wow. Okay, so I'm maybe learning something about myself. I do consider myself a visionary to an extent.
Okay, I like that.
I do dream,
I think every one of us should.
but I think if I had to put a gauge, I think I look behind me a little bit more than I do in front of me. So that's why it's kind of a question that caught me off guard that I would actually need to spend a little time to
Thinking about
think
it.
about it, because again, of course, you always have to look forward too, but I like to study and analyze myself from what I did in the past.
Right.
So I when I see certain things in the future, I know
Right.
how to navigate and approach those things. What would I tell myself in the future? Wow.
But you just kind of told me a little bit about that, right? Because you're the type of persons that look back in the past and you look at the lessons you had and the blessings you had, and that's how you move forward. That's what I got just from what you're saying.
Yeah, sure. That's a great way of putting it as well. You know, man, especially when you talk about financial, because I can tell my future self a lot of life type things, but the financial aspects.
Well, a lot of life plays into finance, right? Because we have to pay attention when people say, "Oh, I'm not good with money," and then they just end it there.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a choice. We have to deal with money, right? That's part of our life. You can either be good or bad. That's your choice. That's the choice. It's not whether you have to deal with money is our choice. We have to. Right? So it's your choice now how you deal with it. Just like everything else that comes to us in life, right? We don't have a lot of choice with some of the things that come to, we don't have a lot of choice at all on everything that comes to us, but how we deal with it.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're absolutely right.
What would you tell a young entertainer that is starting out now that you wish you would have known then about money, or about how to gauge themselves, about
well, I would say that in business,
yes,
okay, and entertainment is business,
right, absolutely,
it takes money to make money,
right.
And with that being said, what you would want to do is it's okay to live out your dreams and your passions through entertainment, but at the same time, you also have to leverage that with a diverse array of interests that can also have a financial gain to it.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean entrepreneurship per se. If you're going to get a 9 to 5, you know, it should be within the spectrum of something that you can still take from that aspect and apply it to your music and apply it to that business.
Right.
One of the things that I've learned over the years. So we talked about the good points of the late 80s and 90s,
right,
and early 2000s. I would say the biggest negative from that, being that we were the first generation, kind of like credit. We also didn't understand the contractual side,
right,
of putting a product out there that would continually allow us to gain residual income
right
from.
mm-hmm.
Many many of us, from a 5-time Grammy Award-winning group like TLC that went bankrupt,
Right.
to MC Hammer.
Yeah.
Like the list is
It's endless.
countless,
I
right?
know.
I think the one thing we all learned was, popularity didn't translate into a financial gain.
Right.
We were very popular,
Right.
right? People had posters of us. People were reciting our songs. We could hear ourselves on the radios and all that. But the people that were getting paid from that
Was not you.
was not the artist.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that being said, what I would tell a establishing artist is, you want to look at a teeter-totter, right? And so up here is where you want to be with your entertainment. Down here, you need to channel money into that venture.
Right.
So go ahead and find you an occupation or a job or even a career that is going to allow you to comfortably put money into or make an investment.
Make an investment.
Right?
Yep.
And to where eventually that teeter-totter levels.
Right.
And what you want is to where it flips to where now what you wanting to do with your music is now the main source.
Right.
Instead of just a goal.
Right.
It's the main source of
that feeds everything else.
That feeds that.
Mm-hmm.
Today's, I would say, artists, when it comes to music, whether it's hip hop or R&B or even country, they actually have a phenomenal way of cutting through all that extra red tape.
Right.
People nowadays are with a laptop are creating music and recording music, and with a click of a couple buttons can now send it into the universe.
Right.
And without having to have all these different gatekeepers that would monetize off of your effort.
Right. Where they have to invest, so to say.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So, that, and that's the thing, when I hear people quitting their jobs to pursue entertainment solely, and I kind of want to interject just a little bit of perspective for them.
Right. Learned perspective, lessons perspective.
I think COVID, being that you had mentioned COVID earlier, I think that really reminded people in the service and entertainment industry just how important it is to have other ventures outside of that.
Right.
Because when the world stopped,
entertainment stopped.
I was fortunate that throughout my years, I had compartmentalized different aspects of my life. So it wasn't, DJ Newmark wasn't just entertainer.
Right.
Okay. Then you had Edward Alexander.
Right.
Which is my government name, and I was doing military.
Government name.
And then outside of that, then I had Coach Alexander, where I was a professional basketball coach.
Which you still are.
Which I still am.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing about it is that these are different passions.
Right.
That now at the age of 53, I'm actually getting residual and passive income from all of those, except for the coaching. I still have to put in the work to get, paid. But
it's your passion.
Right. It's my passion, sure.
Yeah.
And musically, we're starting to see the residuals. That's why you see a lot of throwback artists having to perform, because that's really how we get paid.
Right.
Because it's not off of the monies
that you made but didn't get.
Right. And a lot of people are changing. Like apparently there is this rule, this 35-year rule in entertainment to where artists can go back and refile certain paperwork.
Oh, that's royalties. Interesting.
Yeah. And so, shout outs to, people like Prince and other pioneers that really brought that technicality to light.
Right. Yeah.
Where everyone can benefit that was part of that era.
Yeah.
But I would definitely, tell.
I think that's excellent advice.
I would definitely tell like my future self, because I'm still thinking about that in the back of my mind. It's that RAM, RAM is going back there. I would just tell my future self to trust the decisions that are being made today
Right.
by me, because I would like to think that I'm the wisest now in my life that I've ever been.
Right.
Not to say again that I can't learn.
Right.
But the decisions that I'm making do have
calculated risk.
considerations for tomorrow.
Right.
So my tomorrow self, you may not understand what the hell are you doing. Just trust the process,
Trust
bro.
the process.
Trust the process, bro.
I like that. I think that's an excellent point. I do believe that financial education, always going to bring it back to that. Financial education comes with entrepreneurial education and learning about all those different things. Like a house contract, for example, is similar to what you're saying about having your entertainment contract. All of those things, understanding those numbers is number one. And then all those people, because of that happening, all the people who quote unquote were smarter than you kind of took advantage. I don't know if there's lack of a better word.
Yeah,
took advantage of these young talents and literally got 75% of their money. So. But that's because we were lack our education and understanding all of that. That's one, and two is what I want to touch on is the other thing that you said is one of the things that I do teach with our Get Wealthy with Me and all my online platforms and my courses is making your first $5 with the sweat, right? You sweat and you make that first $5. You might need to use two and then there's three more. What do you do with those three is you have to multiply it. So along the years for your future self, that three should be $30.
Right.
So how you do that in the different aspects or revenue streams, that's where that financial education comes in.
Absolutely.
So I agree we have to sweat and we have to work hard or whatever, but what we do with it, how smart we are with our money is what builds your wealth.
Absolutely.
So, and what builds your future, what makes your future self more content and able to enjoy when you can't sweat anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be the last advice I give you. DJ Newmark, you have to come back.
Oh, I can't wait. I'm bringing Popeye's chicken with me next time.
You have to come back. We have to talk more. We want to hear more about what you're doing in the future. On top of you coming back on the show, I want to hang out more.
Absolutely.
And we are going to be hanging out more. We're going to be doing some stuff at the end of the month with each other. Chala's going to be posting all of that online and having all that stuff. DJ Newmark is going to be doing his philanthropic endeavor with us, hanging out with 100 women in Wellington, Florida. Watch out, guys. Woo! With the women in Wellington. So we're looking forward to that. I think this is going to air before that. But thank you for coming. I really enjoyed this conversation and I want you to come back and for us to talk about, I'm going to have you strategically answer that future self question.
All right.
You did answer it a little bit more after you digged into it there.
I was too busy thinking about it. I couldn't let that go.
Yeah.
But let me just say before we leave, again, I really appreciate what you're doing for the community. Your platform is so much needed in my humble opinion. You have obviously the know-how. You have a perfect team that's helping you bring your thoughts to the world. It was certainly a honor to be a guest on your platform. And definitely, we're going to hang out more.
We're going to hang out more.
Popeye's chicken for everybody.
Only once in a while, though, because we're in our 50s. So we got to watch it a little bit. Right, DJ?
Yeah, that point.
Well, thank you guys for watching another episode or listening to another episode of Get Wealthy with Me. Please comment below of anything that you would like. If you have a question for DJ Newmark, you can comment too and we'll pass it on to him. And all of his information, all of his social will be in our YouTube and wherever you're listening to your podcast.